When we see the Reapers, they're in these crazy, scary masks. Our inspiration for these was sort of a mishmash of different influences. Military can sometimes have tactical masks, and sometimes they do have things like skulls or interesting designs on them. And then we were also just looking at different kinds of post-apocalyptic concept art, video games, to just things that are written about with people in gas masks and stuff. And when we were thinking about like, what is the look of this group, they're almost like these faceless people that come in like the Grim Reaper. Because of Dog being separated from Daryl, he chases the dog and finds the dog with this Reaper. And it turns out the Reaper is Leah. We had always planned for that to be the story. This is not a story we came up with after that first episode with Daryl and Leah aired. And also a lot of time has passed. So there's obviously a story that has happened in the interim. And when they kind of crash into each other, there's a whole lot that's going on through Daryl's head. But the first thing is, I gotta lie to get out of it. Like whatever I have to say to do to get out of this, like I'm gonna leverage that little bit of trust that she has in me to help my people, because as soon as he sees her on the other side of this, he's like, okay, maybe I was wrong about her, but I'm not really gonna hang around to try to figure it out.
Look, I don't know who you're fighting, but I am not part of it.
The way that we always thought about this group is that they probably have a series of things that they do when they come across what would be enemy combatants to them. They were all basically like military contractors, or what some would call mercenaries. And they were doing these things at a time when there was a lot of torture that was sort of like sanctioned in the military. So they all learned those techniques and became very familiar with them before the world fell. And so for the Reapers, this is just part of what they have to do. And I think Leah is a character that she can't be seen to be showing any softness towards anybody. She is part of this group and she answers to somebody else. So she may be the one that is, at least in name, in charge of the situation. But I think that that question sits out there like, is she really in charge of the situation, or has she been asked to carry out orders and she feels that she needs to? She doesn't love what she's seeing, you know, and she puts a stop to it or a pause to it when it feels like it's going too far for too long. So there's just a lot of complicated emotions that are running through the whole thing.
The one we answer to won't be so nice.
We got really fortunate in casting Richie Coster in this role as Pope. He just had a take on it right away. When we were developing this character, one of the things that we talked about is just this idea of being chosen and what that can, in the most extreme versions, cause people to do. For Pope, we just felt that it'd be interesting to kind of illustrate somebody who probably was a brilliant tactical mind, was probably a really great commander, and yet became kind of disgruntled by the system and felt left behind in some ways, and saw people that he felt were left behind. There was this story, this thing that felt miraculous happen, which is actually not that uncommon, which is that sometimes you're in a building in a raging fire and the fire jumps your building.
And that's when I knew we were the chosen ones.
God had spared them all for something important, and that made him feel like he needed to go throughout this after time and grab what they needed on behalf of his people. And, you know, in many ways, he has been an effective leader of his people in that he has kept them safe and alive, but at what cost to anybody else? This idea of a trial by fire just felt like this divine test. We felt like that was just a very dramatic way to illustrate the type of danger that they're all in, but Leah too. For whatever it's worth, there is a kind of a turning point for Leah in that moment as well, because it's one thing to be inside the circle of love and to feel like she's one of his favorites and he sees her as a daughter, but what kind of father sticks their daughter in a room and sets it on fire with like no obvious way to get out? That is super, super intense. And so for both of these characters, they kind of come out of this, and Hope intends for them to come out feeling like changed people, and they do, but maybe not in the way that he's thinking is going to happen. in this scene where he puts Bossy's head in the fire, we wanted to kind of show a few things. One is that, you know, in the apocalypse, we've seen our characters, we've seen villains, we've seen a lot of them do some pretty intense things. And the question is, who are the people that are going to stand up to that, and who is just going to try to live with it, and who is complicit in it, who is cheering it on? Daryl's just kind of coming into this situation knowing very little about them, and he's still learning what all of it means and where they all stand. And the big lesson out of this is nobody's going to stand up to Pope easily. I think for some of them, it's a wake-up call to realize like how intense the situation has gotten. I don't actually think Pope has killed a lot of his own people in this way. I think it's always been like, it's us against the world. But now that he's put Leah in a burning room, just threw one of these people that she considers like a brother in the fire, the equation is shifting. And I think there's a sense of unease. For Daryl, all of this is intel that he's taking in, and he's realizing like, I've got to tread very, very carefully here. He's in a dangerous situation.
We are the chosen ones. We run into the battle. We run into the fire. Always.